Alright, so if you've been following this series of videos, you know that we are drawing up the My First Car here in Autodesk Fusion 360. And at this point now, we've gone and drawn the main body of the car. We've drawn our our canister housing up the top here with the fillet between the two, which is great. Now if we head back to the drawings in the PDF, we can see that the next step after we've done that first fillet there is to jump in and start cutting out for our rear wheel housing. Okay, we've got a bunch of different dimensions on it, as you can see here. There's a hole in it as well. We can see we've got a thing called an offset in it, side extrusion offset. We've got the side extrusion that we've got to do. Specific distances in and specific distance long, and of course there's a hole in the center there for the axle of the F1 car. So let's go ahead and start working on that. Now the first thing we're going to need to do is start a new sketch and look at this side extrusion offset and see what that really means. So let's jump into Fusion and let's start with our first sketch on this part. So I'm going to create a new sketch and I'm going to be selecting this side of the body to start with. Now when it comes to drawing something like we need to in this case, that kind of follows some of this geometry, and we also have that offset there, we've got to do some different tools in here. And as far as I can remember, here we go. Under the sketch palette here, we've got this thing called the offset tool. So if we select that one there and we select the outside of our body there, we can see that we can make a new line which is offset from that first line. And on the drawing there, it indicates that the side extrusion offset is 2.5 millimeters in width, which is shown just there. So we're going to need to do that on ours. And the reason for doing this is if you look closely up here in the top corner, you can see that it kind of cuts into the fillet. And we need to make sure we have that spaced out correctly, otherwise it kind of goes under the fillet and doesn't look quite right. So going back to Fusion here, I'm going to type in my 2.5 millimeters for my offset. You can see it's widened that red line out. When I'm happy with that, I click OK. So there we go, we've got that new sketch there with, and it's basically given us a closed loop around that side there at 2.5 millimeters in width. So next thing we need to do is start with a couple of lines that start placing in where we want that wheel housing to be. So I'm just adding in one line there. I'll add one a bit further on, just here. Doesn't really matter where these are at this point. And you can see that I have positioned them along the side of my car there. Now I haven't given specific distances to these yet, but I have got them in there. So next is to dimension them. So let's go back and have a quick look at the sketch here. You can see that we're cutting out that area, and the area between the two lines is 39 millimeters long. So between this line and this one, 39 millimeters. So let's add that. So hitting the D for dimension tool on the keyboard, selecting those two lines, coming down, and 39 millimeters. I'm just going to press enter there, and you can see that I've got my two lines there. Now let's go back to the drawing just briefly, and the rear line of that area needs to be 25.5 millimeters from the very tip of the end of the car there. So let's go ahead and do that now as well. So selecting that end there, selecting that rear line, and we'll make that 25.5 millimeters, and I'm going to hit enter. And there we go, let's position those two lines correctly. Now at the moment they do still look blue, and realistically we do want them to be a fully constrained line, because right now in theory they could move up and down. So what we'll do for that is we're just going to add some dimensions onto those lines on their own, just like that. So click and click, enter, and you can see that one's given the other one its final dimension as well, which is great. So there we go. We'll just get out of our line tool there, and we've got that area all mapped out there ready for us to extrude and cut away. Let's have a quick look at the drawing again. And there we go, we can see just down the bottom here, for that wheel and axle housing we need to come in by 20.5 millimeters from the outside of our car. So let's go ahead and do that now as well. So 20.5 millimeters. Use the Extrude Tool. I'm going to select all parts of that I've just drawn in. I'm just going to change my view now as well, so it'll make it a bit easier for me. And I'm going to drag in this direction. And I'm somewhere near where I need to be. I'm at 21 now. So let's just go ahead and change that. So 20.5, oops, 0.5 millimeters. And you can see there that's going to cut away into the side of our F1 car. So click OK, and there we go. We've done our rear wheel cutaway. Now we also do need to do this up the front of our car. So if we just zoom out a little bit, pan across there. So we're going to need to draw up the front here as well. Now that's on the next page. So we'll scroll down a page here. And you see it's a pretty similar process. And we haven't, you probably noticed that I haven't added in the rear axle hole yet for that back one, but we'll do that and the front one on the same drawing, rather than doing it all at once, all the same sketch I should say. So this one here is 74.5 millimeters from the front end to the back of it, and it's 17.5 millimeters deep, so it should be pretty straightforward to do this one. So jumping back into Fusion, we'll start a new sketch on the side of our car again, and we're just going to draw a line in anywhere from top to bottom like that. So we've got our line, now we need to dimension that from the end of our car, and that was 74.5 millimeters, just like that, and we can go ahead and extrude or cut that one away now. So again, I'll just change my angle before I do that. Select the Extrude or Cut tool, and click that face, and I go negative 17.5 millimeters. We'll just double check that that's correct. So going to my first car there, yep, 17.5 is correct. There we are, 17.5. Click OK, and we've cut away that front section. Now the last thing to do is to pop on those axle holes that we've talked about. So let's have a look at where they are. Now the front one is 19.5 millimeters from the back edge there, 10.5 millimeters up, so in the middle of the car, and it's a 6 millimeter hole through. The back one again, 19.5, 6 millimeter through, and 10.5 down from the top line there, or up from the bottom, whichever. So we can go and do that on one sketch now, and do both of those holes. So let's jump back into Fusion, and we'll create a fresh sketch. And this one I'm just going to click on that front face, and I'll go ahead and I'll start drawing some lines. So, sorry, not lines, we need to draw circles. So going down to our circle tool there, and I'm just going to draw a random circle here. Doesn't really matter where it is at this point. And I am going to do one back here, and you can see there, as I did it, it actually linked it up at the same height as this one here. So now that we've got our two circles in there, we need to dimension them. So hitting the D key on the keyboard, we'll dimension this one to 6 millimeters. Click enter. Alright. And so we've dimensioned one of them. We will dimension its distance now from the back edge here. So 19.5, and up from the bottom as well at 10.5. So that one's in its correct position now. Now one of the great things in Fusion is that we can translate some dimensions from one part of our drawing to another. So what we'll do is I'm going to select these two circles. I'm going to use the equal constraint after right clicking there, which means that they're now equal. I'm going to go ahead and select the center point of those two circles and use our horizontal constraint. That means they're now both at 10.5 millimeters up from the bottom. And the very last one I need to do is just its position from this back line, so I'll use the dimension tool for that. Select the center there, and 19.5 millimeters. So there we go, we've got our two circles drawn. Alright, next thing we need to do is actually extrude those through. So let's change our view, and we'll click on the Extrude tool. I'm going to select both of those circles, so this one here, and this one back here. And I don't want them to go in this direction, I want them to go the other direction. And I'm actually going to use, for this, rather than extent distance, I'm going to select two object. We're going to zoom around to the opposite side of the car. I'm going to select this back face. And you can see now that it's pulling that line all the way through, sorry, the circle all the way through at both positions for the axle holes, right through the car. And we can click OK. And let's swivel back around to the other side, and you can see there we've got our 2 axle holes cut. So let's just move that back into the center of the screen. There we go. So we've cut away the rear wheel housing and the front wheel housing area, and we've taken our axle holes through the car in both positions. Quite straightforward. Alright, hope that's been helpful for you. Thanks for watching.